Hi, my name is Ken Lasseson. This is a companion video to a blog post which should be up shortly. So what we have is the person is done a blog earlier on her, and it's a German CFS patient, and this is the second one. So the first analysis was done on April sample and the latest on September sample. So we have 5 months difference between them. She did the first sample, proceeded to go and follow the suggestions. Which exact suggestions she chose to follow, I don't know. Because the suggestions are neither better or worse. There's some things that are expected to improve. How much is generally unknown because the data just isn't there. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start off to see what has changed. So I click here. We have the two samples up there, and we can go to something like bacterial taxonomy. Click that, and we have everything there, which is overload. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back and not go to that one. What we're going to do is go to outliers, things which are definitely abnormally high or low, and see how it compares between samples. And remember to click the button. And here we have the outliers. And the interesting thing is, wait a minute, nothing has carried over. In other words, change has happened. Whether it's for the better or for the worse, that's somewhat subjective. What we have is we have had 4 highs, which are the blue, and 4 lows, which are now just down to 2, and we had a stack of highs, and they are done. So without looking at the individual bacteria, there is the appearance of things improving, less extremes. Let's go back and take a look at something else. We could look at end products outliers. Let's see what happens there. And we have basically no change. Things are the same. Okay. So no apparent change there. Having everything roughly the same direction is not encouraging, but at the same time it's not depressing. If there are more things worse, then it would be depressing. We also have cake products outliers, same thing, nice, quick, easy one. And what we have is we have everything. First report, everything was low, and now we are, if anything, we have overcompensated. Everything has improved greatly, which is a nice characteristic. So things have improved, a few things have gone high. So in general, the shift seems to be away from having an absence of bacteria to having more. We can go back again, do another one. Okay, enzymes outliers. Let's see what happens there. And again, what we had below is there wasn't enough variety of enzymes being produced by the microbiome. Now we have a lot more being produced, and we have none with lows, which is a good sign, and it actually causes an interesting side effect, which we'll come back to. Let's go back here, and we can do modules outliers. I'm just walking through everything so you can see. And we have only one item change, and it went from probably normal to moving high. So it's basically there, and we can go on. But in short, what we have is we have basically everything the same, or what a microbiome was full of deficiencies now seems to have a fair number of surpluses, and all the prior deficiencies have dissipated. Let's go over and look at the samples again, and let's take a look at the samples. We have 432 in the first samples, 573, which means she has 25% more bacteria in her gut than different types of bacteria in her gut, which means she has more biodiversity. She also has some rare ones showing up, as you can see. there. So she has a much more enriched microbiome, which generally is viewed as a positive characteristic. Okay, so that is the initial walkthrough, and I'm going to do a bit of jumping. You can read the blog in detail. Symptoms, I'm going to take a look at couple of things. Let's just go in, and just for the sake of it, I'm going to go into health analysis, and we have the numbers there, and we see that this is for the earlier one, 50-50, 34-34, 50%. So in general, the bacteria associated with health was less there. Let's flip to the newer ones. And we actually had everything somewhat disappearing there, which is interesting. I need to find out what. But everything that the symptoms of health has gone up. That is bacteria which are identified to being a healthy item. And up here we have for healthy and unhealthy 0 and 4. But in the earlier one, we had 2 healthy and 6 unhealthy. It's been a shift, difference of 4, but generally my view is if there is less flags, be it positive or negative, generally the more things are moving it. We also have JSONs here. You can take a look at the blog one. You can go down here and do more comparison. So that is a whole bunch of items connected there. Let's go back to the samples. And what I'm going to do is actually quickly flip into looking at what are predicted probiotics for cake. Nothing, which means that all these probiotics are determined by things that you're not getting enough enzymes compared to other people. Absolutely nothing. Actually, this is I think the first time I've ever had that happened to me. Let's look at her earlier one. Yep, we have a bunch of there. The numbers here are relatively low compared to many people. Many people have 200 or 300. Major deficiency in some enzyme production. Here, there's no such deficiency. So it's minor deficiency, which has now disappeared into that now. So that's basically a quick overview of comparing the two samples to each other. And in general, the impression I have is things have improved, not as much as we would like to see, but they have improved. So let's go on to the next phase, which is actually trying to get suggestions. And for the suggestions, we're going to use one second. Okay, I'm back. Just had to check my notes so we are on the same page. So the first thing I'm going to do is this person has chronic fatigue syndrome. We have two things. First of all, we have no consensus reports already done. So I'm going to start and create some consensus report, actually a fair number of them. But the process is very fast to create each one, and then you get a consensus trying to look at all the things that we could focus on rather than trying to make a decision. The consensus report says, okay, let's assume everything, and what does everybody agree with? In which case, those are the things which are probably the safest things to do, which has the greatest probability of actually being a benefit. When I did her earlier analysis, the consensus reports weren't there, so it was more hand grinding. And I hate hand grinding, so being a developer, I build tools to mechanize the process, which is what the consensus reports are. So we go down to this one, and we're going to go to chronic fatigue syndrome, already pre-canned. And guess what? We have absolutely no suggestions coming from it. And why do we have no suggestion? It's because none of the bacteria matched the criteria of, which is spelled out here. has to be outside the cutoff markup and have to agree with the PubMed one. So that was an absolutely wipeout, and I recently did a video on why we can get wiped out on wipeouts. And what I'm going to do next, and I need to check why that video didn't show up there, but that's okay, is I'm going to go to Advanced Suggestions, and I'm going to go down and find chronic fatigue syndrome, right there, PubMed study. I'm not going to use the cutoff range. I'm going to use the top, let's say 6% high and low. So instead of the cutoff, which are a statistically detecting where things are statistically abnormal, we are going to be a little bit more forgiving in where we do the cutoff line. And now we're going to go and we're going to see, and everything just basically runs off what is there, the defaults. And voila, now we have it. And what we have here is we have the bacteria which are being targeted. 1 is too low and 4 is too high. We could go and go, instead of the 6%, we could go 9, 12, whatever. Choices I view as largely arbitrary, but we now have a set of suggestions there. And going down the list, cacao is there, and that I know from clinical studies of cacao and chronic fatigue does help, which is independent of the microbiome. Some of the other whey and chronic fatigue helps. Gluten-free diet is frequently found to be helpful. And then we have additional things. Vitamin B12 is a regular recommendation which most CFS MDs give for their patients and does help. And then we have other things, aspirin, etc. Vitamin B3, vitamin B1. A lot of the B1s are there. And typically that is what a chronic fatigue syndrome specialist will prescribe for their patient. So this particular set of suggestions knows nothing about the patient. All they know is the gut, and what the gut suggests are pretty close to what is often suggested by chronic fatigue specialists for patients. So it's sort of, okay, seems to work. So that's number one pass through. And now what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going up to Explorer and Symptoms versus Bacteria Summary, which gives everything, and boop, 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 I'll pull myself down there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in chronic fatigue syndromes we have right here, and we have 100. The key thing is we have 145 samples in the cohort. The bigger the numbers there, the greatest preference is to use one with high numbers, because it means there's less noise in the analysis. Small numbers, you can get some real oddball data showing up, which has actually no significance. It's just randomness. So we're going to go and click here, which takes us over to a page saying how many matches we have, strong, weak, etc. And things are automatically checked for you. And what is checked is strong and very strong, which in this case amounts to being 23 out of 26 bacteria. So it's a good percentage of them. And the other 3 are there but weak. So we just going to go in and run with this. Click here. Takes us over to the official, to the suggestion page. We click that. We now have our suggestions. And now when we go back to here, we should see, ouch. Okay, I need to redo something. I managed to pick the wrong thing, so I'm going to quickly do it. So I'm going to do a clear consensus here, and I'm going to redo stuff. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and I know exactly what I did wrong, and I should point it out to you, because you probably could do the same thing I did, which is when you go in the route I was doing, which is very straightforward, easy route. You just go and find and click it. It will go and usually picks the first sample you have, and we are wanting it for the second sample. So we go and we check that, and now we have there we have 23 and 1. So in some ways, for the bacteria which we have available on measurements, we have a pretty strong match there. And now we go here, and we just go right through. We can check the bacteria. There we have everything which are there. If you go to 16, back to the sample page, you will see we have it. It says free. And actually, we can list the consensus suggestion. What we see is the first one, what we get one there, which was a placeholder from totally automated CFS one, which produced nothing. So we have a placeholder there. So we know it was there. So we have the free, we have the 2 consensus and a dummy placeholder. And now we're going to need to go over into symptoms. And what we're going to do is go to probable symptoms from bacteria. And we use that because it's the easiest one to get suggestions from, because it basically pre-selects bacteria. And there we have the matches. And if we flip up here, you can see the whole thing. And you can see we are doing pretty good for matches. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 16 out of the 20 items which we forecast as the most probable being matches. That is an 80% hit rate, which is I'm quite pleased with. It's much better than some of the others. And please note, if you make a request for me to do a review, please fill out the symptoms ahead of time. I'm going to start becoming dogmatic, requiring it before I will look at doing an educational blog post, which is what these are. I am not a consultant. I do not consult. I do not give direct personal. I will show you how to use the system, but everything that comes out of it should be reviewed by your professional medical advisor. Okay, so we have them, and what we're going to do is we are going to, I'm first going to get rid of some stuff here, and I'm just doing some things off screen for the moment just to make it easier. Close to the right. Okay, yes, I'm going to go for each one of these. All I have to do is click on it, and I'm going to open a new window. There it is, and just click and click, and we have the next one done, and we can go back and we just can walk through all of them the same way. Click, open a new window, create a sample, get the suggestions, go back. So I'm going to actually pause in a moment and get the rest of it done and come back. Okay, I saved you the boring time of me going back and forth ad nauseum. We now have a consensus suggestions here. We can go and see how many each one came, and you can see that some was very few, only 100 there. Now, most of these suggestions will overlap to various degrees, and the grand total will actually be considerably less. I suspect probably about 450 items. So, but that gives you how long ago each one was done, roughly, and how many suggestions each one produced. So let's go and view consensus. So we have the consensus here. We have actually a very pleasing 28 items on the safest takes. The safest takes are safest because we can find absolutely no literature that this substance will push the bacteria we're trying to change for any of the 18 items we looked at in the wrong direction, which means that probably no very little risk to it. And if we start here, you can see the 2 dominant items, which almost half the items agree. 10 separate set of suggestions has it listed, which is ferric citrate, basically iron supplement, acetic acid. Seaweed comes in next with lots of their magnesium deficient diet is a interesting one. It could often magnesium is advocated for chronic fatigue syndrome, but the risk is sometimes you get too much magnesium and it becomes counterproductive. The question is, it's not a you hit A or B, it's somewhere in the middle. You have to balance it, which is sometimes a bit of a nightmare because it's hard to do it. Again, another seaweed. We've got 2 seaweed there, having rice, etc. So you can do it by comparing the count, or you could go and see which items has the highest impact. Ackermann's Municipal, which is now available as a probiotic, has the highest absolute value to it. Broccoli. Okay, lots of broccoli. And then we have the seaweed, juice, fruit-based cellulose, all which is probably getting a lot of fruit fibers in. Interesting. Some of the things that come up are interesting, and if you question it, take a look at the count. If the count is relatively low, these are more oddball things because we have very incomplete data. Okay, so those are the safest, absolutely nothing. The next list down has 20 items, actually less, and what we have is the take and the net. The take is greater than net, and the number of items it's suggested to be take is greater than the one to avoid. So if you go and search this one, the highest number down, we see somewhat contradictory: high red meat, low fat, which would imply low fat red meat. There, saccharin, which is an interesting one, citron. Again, all of these are there. These are very frequent, and again, it's a subjective call. There's no hard, fast, magical rule. These just simply what the numbers grinds out. And then we have likely saved, which have nothing, absolute wipeout. Down the bottom, we have items which are to be avoided. And that means you need to go through what you usually consume, see if any of them are in here. Cinnamon is there, maize, high fructose corn syrup, which is not surprising for maize, dairy, whole milk also on the avoid list. So they are spelling things out there. And then we get down into ones which the void is greater than a net, and also pay attention to count. And then we have some, and as above we have absolutely nothing. Now, what we have is we have the confidence. The confidence of the suggestion is set of 3. If you change it to 1, you'll see you'll get more. You get from 26 to 50, just about double. So you can go and see what the numbers are, and you can go and see what the lesser one. Again, what we're trying to do is not overwhelm you with a shopping list of 500 items, which you could literally get from here, but to try to rank order the things that you should try doing, looking at things like the cost of buying, availability of buying, whether or not there's any secondary reactions you have, whether or not you tolerate something, etc. So the idea is to give you a list which you can pick from at your heart's content according to your own preferences or according to the preferences of your naturopath or your MD, and similar at the bottom, things to avoid for similar reason. So we also have here buried is something called a download, and the download allows you to download everything so you can load it up in Excel or Google spreadsheet, which is what is here. And all the numbers are dumped in alphabetical order with a link to the literature. And you can go in and take a look at it, and it has everything, no matter what value it is, from the smallest to the largest. It is in Excel here, so you can go and you can sort and do whatever you want with it. So you can go and refine the choices. The page before was trying to make a simple decision to see. Here you can go down and see where, okay, here's, we have a bunch of bacillus here, and you can go in and see which ones it is, or is it all there. And what we find is that sometimes you find one bacillus tends to be adverse, another one tends to be really good, and then sometimes it's a particular subspecies happens to be clear, like the natto is basically almost a total avoid, and this one is a strong avoid. So there's a whole bunch of things there. And generally, the key thing to remember is most of these names are the names used in the PubMed article, and there and there, and something looks like I may have reversed columns. Okay, or done, but okay, regardless, the number is sitting there, and I think got some checking up on it, on the logic, but at the moment it seems fine in terms of the page. The download page feels like it has a bug in it, and I'll see if I can verify or eliminate the bug. Okay, so that's basically it. That's going through the process. You have a bunch of suggestions, and you can go in and sort things out in different groups, and just play around that way. So you can go with any one of the lists you want of suggestions. My key is that the suggestions are probably more likely to be beneficial than randomness. And sometimes you get a little bit of surprise when you put everything together. So it becomes a little bit of dilemma. Going into the spreadsheet, you do have the joys of saying, okay, why do we have this one? And you can go over and take a look at the literature on it. There's also, because we did most of the thing with citizen science, and with citizen science, what we end up doing is we dealing with middle peak, and middle peak are troublesome because you want to move away from the value you are. The question is, do you go up or do you go down? And that often can put some odd twists and suggestions. The problem is if you're at 20th percentile and you want to get away from the middle peak, the question is, what is the middle peak, which isn't listed here? It is going to either say, okay, we need to increase it if you are above whatever this particular symptom is, or decrease it if you are below it. You want to go away from the value you are relative to the common value, which becomes a little bit quirky. So other times I would be inclined to take a bit of care. Looking at the numbers, my gut feeling in terms of literature is to just keep with that chronic, the very first one we did, which is the chronic fatigue syndrome one. Here, the middle peak may actually be a problem. You may want to go through and uncheck everything which isn't a high or low and work that way, which is more conservative and safer. And actually I may revise the pages to automatically do that going forward, because it is a more conservative. The high-low shifts, when you have value here and value here, and you need to get away from being in this location, going high or going low, may be a poor choice. I need to choose that over, but for the moment it's there. And don't be surprised to see if the auto checks only happens for highs and lows in feature. You can always override it, but it just becomes sort of, it's a more conservative approach to it, and I have a feeling it'd be better. I'm probably going to rerun the samples with that, but that's, I'll put into the blog the results rather than taking you through all of that again. So that's basically it. This is the walkthrough of how to do it. I see a few changes I want to make, and I'm going to get those made, and then finish the post, and then attach this video to the post and upload everything after the reader has reviewed it.